January 17th, 1944. The sun rises over a Pacific island, casting a harsh, white glare on jagged coral cliffs. The sea crashes relentlessly, carrying the salty bite of the ocean into the air. Smoke curls from distant explosions. The ground vibrates beneath the roar of naval guns. On the beach, men in blue denim coveralls push bulldozers across sand riddled with craters. They're not soldiers, at least not in the conventional sense. They're the Navy's Seabees. Just builders, the brass calls them. But here, under the relentless sun and enemy fire, there's something else entirely. Japanese pillboxes, the coastline, their slit-like windows spewing bursts of lead and shrapnel. Each machine gun nest is a fortress of concrete, logs, and wire. Ordinary engineers would falter, but the Seabees keep moving. They dig, they clear, they smash. A bulldozer's blade crushes a bunker's entrance, revealing the enemy inside. The air smells of gunpowder, sweat, and salt. Men shout, orders overlap, and the machine rumbles on. In this chaotic dance of survival and construction, a paradox emerges. The very builders meant to erect airstrips and roads must first bulldoze death itself. What began as a mission to build becomes a fight to survive. And in these islands, the line between soldier and engineer will vanish entirely. The question looms over the smoke and sand. How did these just builders become warriors capable of flattening fortified Japanese defenses? By early 1942, the United States had been thrust fully into a war it had long tried to avoid. The attack on Pearl Harbor left the Pacific Fleet crippled, and the Japanese Imperial Army and Navy were advancing across Southeast Asia and the Pacific with astonishing speed. Every island seemed to fall effortlessly into enemy hands, and every day brought reports of fortified positions and strongholds that challenged conventional military strategy. It was clear that victory in the Pacific would not come from sheer numbers alone. The U.S. military needed a force capable of moving fast, building essential infrastructure under fire, and adapting to the harshest conditions imaginable. Conventional engineers could construct airfields and supply depots, but only in safety. The Pacific, however, offered no such luxury. The solution was radical. Create a unit of men who could build with the precision of engineers and fight with the ferocity of infantry. These men became the United States Navy's construction battalions, better known as the Seabees. The Seabees were born out of necessity. The Naval Construction Force was officially commissioned on March 5th, 1942. Recruitment drew heavily from civilian tradesmen, carpenters, bulldozer operators, welders, electricians, men whose hands were accustomed to building, not shooting. But all would be trained in combat. This dual identity defined the Seabees from the outset. Builders first, warriors when required. The Navy's mantra, "We build, we fight," captured both pride and inevitability. Training was rigorous and relentless. Men learned not only construction techniques, but also weapons handling, infantry tactics, and demolitions. Simulated combat zones tested their ability to work under pressure. Bulldozers, cranes, and trucks became as familiar as rifles and pistols. By the time a Seabee arrived on a frontline island, he was ready for both tasks: to erect an airstrip in record time or to push through enemy defenses under fire. Guadalcanal, in late 1942, became the first proving ground. The Japanese had fortified the island with bunkers, trenches, and interlocking fields of fire. Seabees landed alongside Marines, immediately tasked with clearing obstacles and constructing supply routes. They leveled forests, dug roads, and built airstrips, often within artillery range of entrenched enemy positions. These early operations revealed the essence of Seabee warfare. Construction was survival, and survival required combat. Yet the challenge went beyond enemy fire. The Pacific Islands presented extreme climates and hostile terrain. Volcanic rock, dense jungles, swamps, and coral reefs slowed every operation. Disease, heat stroke, and fatigue became as lethal as bullets. Every bulldozer blade pressed through tangled roots or sandbags was a battle against nature itself. Engineers, without weapons, would have been quickly overwhelmed. But the Seabees' training ensured they were ready to respond. By mid-1943, the Navy had expanded the Seabees into dozens of battalions, each with specialized capabilities. Some focused on heavy construction, airfields, bridges, and ports. Others carried explosives, tasked with clearing obstacles or demolishing enemy fortifications. Their operations were carefully coordinated with Navy and Marine assaults, transforming raw islands into operational bases within weeks. Through Guadalcanal and the Solomons, the Seabees proved that speed, adaptability, and ingenuity could overcome both natural and human obstacles. They became indispensable in the island-hopping campaign, allowing American forces to seize territory faster than the Japanese could fortify it. But with every island taken, the cost became clearer. Casualties were high. Equipment was destroyed or buried under rubble. And the Japanese defenses, far from passive, evolved to meet the builders' ingenuity. It was a continuous cycle. The Seabees built under fire, the Japanese adapted, and the engineers had to innovate again. The stakes were immense. Every road, airstrip, and cleared field was not just a logistical achievement. It was a matter of life and death. Each success brought the U.S. closer to retaking the Pacific, but each failure could mean disaster for the men on the ground. This intersection of construction and combat would define the Seabees' legacy. Theirs was a war fought with bulldozers and rifles alike, where engineering skill became a weapon as lethal as any machine gun. And while Guadalcanal tested their abilities, even greater challenges lay ahead. Islands fortified with concrete, barbed wire, and determination, awaiting the next wave of builders turned warriors. By 1943, American forces were gaining momentum in the Pacific, but the Japanese had learned quickly. Their strategy was no longer simply to hold territory. They would fortify it, turn islands into death traps, and force the enemy to bleed for every yard. Pillboxes, tunnels, and interlocking fields of fire became standard features of Japanese defenses. Each fortified island was carefully selected, often elevated or surrounded by natural obstacles, making amphibious assaults perilous. The Japanese understood the terrain intimately. Coral reefs prevented landing craft from reaching beaches directly. Dense jungles and volcanic ridges concealed machine gun nests and artillery emplacements. Even when the Americans advanced, the enemy had already prepared fallback positions, booby traps, and hidden strongpoints. Engineers were critical to overcoming these obstacles. Without rapid construction of roads, bridges, and landing strips, the momentum of the Pacific campaign would stall. The Seabees faced a dual challenge: the environment itself and a determined, adaptable enemy. On islands like Tarawa and Kwajalein, every advance required clearing tangled vegetation, leveling coral ridges, and filling craters, all while under small arms fire and artillery barges. Traditional military engineering methods were too slow. Improvisation became a necessity. Bulldozers were reinforced with steel plating, cranes were converted to mobile machine gun platforms, and explosives were used not only for construction but for immediate battlefield demolition. Logistics dictated the pace of war in the Pacific. A single airstrip could determine whether fighter planes could protect Marines on the ground or provide close air support for upcoming operations. Fuel, ammunition, and medical supplies had to arrive in perfect synchronization. The Seabees' ability to construct under fire became a force multiplier. Their presence meant that captured islands could be transformed into operational bases within days rather than months, denying the Japanese time to regroup or reinforce. Japanese pillboxes, often constructed with reinforced concrete and timber, presented unique challenges. Some are partially buried, connected by tunnels, or positioned behind natural terrain features to maximize fields of fire. Standard infantry attacks were costly. Marines and soldiers frequently became pinned down, unable to advance without support. The solution fell to the Seabees. Bulldozers, explosives, and ingenuity turned static fortifications into temporary obstacles rather than permanent defenses. Beyond the physical fortifications, the Japanese employed psychological tactics. Sniper fire, night raids, and booby-trapped wreckage slowed American advances. The men on the beaches were exhausted, facing not only bullets and shells, but the knowledge that any mistake could be fatal. The Seabees' training, engineers who could fight, became vital. Their ability to think tactically while building allowed them to counter both the physical and psychological barriers imposed by the defenders. By the time U.S. forces reached islands like Saipan and Peleliu in 1944, the Seabees' reputation had grown. Commanders understood that no advance could succeed without their skill. Bulldozers became weapons of war. Roads and airstrips became strategic lifelines. Japanese defenses, no matter how well conceived, were vulnerable to coordinated assaults that combined engineering skill with combat tactics. The Pacific Campaign had become a war of adaptation. The Japanese refined their defenses. The Americans, through the Seabees, refined their approach to assault, logistics, and construction. Each island was a lesson in both engineering and warfare, a testing ground where human ingenuity met entrenched resistance. And yet, while the strategy and technology were critical, the story of the Seabees was also deeply human. Ordinary men, plucked from civilian life, faced extraordinary circumstances. They lived in the mud, sweat, and heat of the islands, navigating coral reefs, mosquito-infested swamps, and constant artillery fire. Each construction task was intertwined with survival. Each bulldozer movement could mean life or death. And each fortified pillbox they leveled was a testament to their dual purpose. Builders and warriors, inseparable under the Pacific sun. It was this intersection, terrain, technology, and tenacity, that defined the Seabees. Without their ability to adapt, the island-hopping strategy might have faltered. With it, they not only built roads and airfields, they bulldozed Japanese defenses into dust, clearing the way for victory. This relentless combination of engineering skill and combat readiness set the stage for examining the many perspectives from which the Seabees War could be understood. The human, tactical, technological, and moral angles that made them uniquely effective. The story of the Seabees is inseparable from the men who became legends in their own right. Ordinary tradesmen, carpenters, machinists, bulldozer operators, electricians were thrust from workshops and lumber yards into the inferno of the Pacific. For many, the first experience of combat came not in a classroom or training ground, but under the roar of Japanese machine guns on a beach at dawn. Men like Chief Builder Clarence Smiley, who had spent his civilian life constructing bridges in Ohio, suddenly found himself operating a bulldozer under fire at Tarawa. His vehicle became a shield for advancing Marines, and every push through sandbags and coral was measured in inches, seconds, and survival. Another, Seabee Private First Class Jack Hogan, wrote in a letter home that the roar of artillery had a rhythm that he had to match with each lever and blade of his bulldozer, engineer and warrior intertwined. The human dimension was one of endurance, adaptability, and sheer nerve. Men who had never touched a rifle were firing in defense of their own construction crews. Teams that had spent weeks planning a simple road suddenly had to improvise demolition under fire, save wounded comrades, and maintain equipment in a corrosive saltwater environment. These were not scripted heroics. They were raw, immediate, and dangerous acts of survival. Yet the camaraderie among the Seabees was profound. They understood that their work was inseparable from their lives. They shared food, tools, and bullets alike. Every completed airstrip, every cleared road, was a testament not only to skill, but to trust and cohesion forged in the crucible of combat. These human stories became the foundation of the Seabees' reputation. Builders who could not only construct, but survive, adapt, and fight. Tactically, the Seabees transformed the battlefield. Their operations were not mere support. They directly shaped combat outcomes. On islands like Saipan and Peleliu, Japanese fortifications slowed Marine advances and inflicted heavy casualties. The solution often fell to the Seabees. Their bulldozers and engineers did more than build. They enabled attacks that might otherwise have stalled. Bulldozers were armored and fitted with steel plates to resist small arms fire. They cleared barbed wire, knocked down bunkers, and created impromptu roads for infantry and supply convoys. Explosives were deployed with precision, collapsing pillboxes while minimizing exposure for Marines advancing behind them. In effect, the Seabees became force multipliers, allowing the Marines and Navy units to strike more effectively. Coordination was critical. A single misstep could destroy a landing operation. The Seabees had to understand artillery timing, enemy firing patterns, and terrain limitations. Their dual role blurred the line between engineering and combat tactics. Unlike traditional combat engineers, whose work often followed a battle, the Seabees were embedded within the front line, making instant decisions that could turn the tide of localized engagements. Tactics were also adaptive. On islands with narrow beaches, bulldozers operated in tandem, pushing simultaneously to overwhelm Japanese defenses. Night operations required stealth, relying on minimal light and precise navigation. The Seabees' ability to integrate engineering with combat tactics allowed the United States to maintain momentum across the Pacific. each completed project a stepping stone for the next assault. Technology defined the Seabees' impact almost as much as their courage. The Pacific War demanded innovation under fire. Bulldozers, cranes, and trucks were modified for combat. Armor plating protected operators. Dozers were fitted with winches and makeshift flamethrowers to clear entrenched positions. Even basic tools became weapons. Shovels, picks, and saws were used to demolish fortifications or repair vehicles under fire. Explosives were another critical technological edge. Seabees learned to use dynamite and TNT not just for construction, but to collapse pillboxes, tunnels, and obstacles. On Tarawa, Seabees rigged demolition charges in coral bunkers, timing the blast to coincide with marine advances. Each explosion required calculation, nerves of steel, and an understanding of structural engineering, turning the builder's tools into instruments of war. Communication technology also played a role. Radios allowed Seabees to coordinate with artillery and naval gunfire, ensuring that demolitions did not endanger friendly troops. Surveying equipment enabled rapid mapping of beaches, reefs, and ridges, allowing bulldozers to operate efficiently even under combat conditions. The fusion of civilian construction technology with military innovation created a new form of warfare, one in which engineering directly dictated battlefield outcomes. The success of the Seabees was inseparable from the leadership that guided them. Naval officers and Seabee commanders faced a unique challenge, integrating civilian tradesmen into combat operations without sacrificing efficiency or safety. Leaders had to understand both construction and military strategy, often improvising under conditions no training manual could fully anticipate. Captain Clyde W. Knoll, a prominent Seabee officer in the Solomons, exemplified this dual approach. He coordinated bulldozer teams to clear landing zones while under artillery fire, simultaneously communicating with infantry units advancing alongside him. Decisions were rapid and consequential. One miscalculation could expose men to machine gun fire, ruin an airstrip, or stall a critical supply chain. Commanders like Knoll relied on deep trust in their crew's expertise, giving them autonomy to adapt in real time. Leadership also meant preparing men psychologically. Many Seabees had never seen combat before deployment. Officers balanced discipline with encouragement, ensuring that fear did not paralyze innovation. They cultivated resilience. Men learned to keep machines running under fire, protect comrades, and maintain focus despite exhaustion, heat, and relentless danger. This leadership style forged a culture of initiative, where each Seabee understood that his actions could influence the outcome of an entire operation. The Japanese defenders quickly recognized the threat posed by the Seabees. Traditional defensive strategies, pillboxes, bunkers, and interlocking fields of fire were highly effective against infantry, but less so against bulldozers and engineers with explosives. On Tarawa, Japanese reports expressed surprise and frustration at the speed with which Seabees leveled fortified positions, clearing paths for advancing Marines. Japanese tactics evolved in response. Fortifications were buried deeper, reinforced with steel and coral, and connected via tunnels to allow defenders to survive bombardments. Snipers and booby traps were positioned to target construction crews specifically. The Japanese understood that if they could neutralize the Seabees, the advance of American forces would slow dramatically. In essence, the Seabees were a primary target. Engineers had become combatants as much as infantry, and enemy strategy reflected that reality. Despite this, the Japanese could not fully counter the Seabees' adaptability. Each new defensive measure prompted innovation. Armored bulldozers, timed demolitions, and synchronized operations with infantry and naval gunfire. The dynamic became a deadly game of adaptation, each side testing the other's ingenuity. The Seabees' ability to overcome fortifications under fire forced Japanese defenders into increasingly desperate measures, revealing the growing psychological strain of facing an enemy who could both build and fight. The dual role of the Seabees raised profound moral and psychological questions. These were men trained as builders, artists of construction, suddenly tasked with combat and destruction. Their tools, bulldozers, shovels, explosives, were transformed into instruments of war, often crushing enemy positions in brutal, immediate ways. Many Seabees struggled with this duality. Letters home reveal a tension between pride in accomplishing critical construction tasks and the guilt of having to destroy lives in the process. The psychological burden was compounded by extreme conditions, tropical heat, disease, and constant threat of enemy fire. Yet there was also resilience. The work itself provided purpose and focus. Clearing a pillbox, completing an airstrip, or opening a supply route became acts of survival, both for themselves and the Marines relying on them. This intersection of duty, morality, and survival shaped the Seabees' legacy. They were not merely soldiers, nor merely builders. They were a hybrid force, navigating a world where creation and destruction were inseparably intertwined. Their ability to maintain cohesion and effectiveness under such conditions was a testament to human adaptability, ingenuity, and endurance. February 20th, 1944. The island of Eniwetok lies in the middle of the Pacific, a speck of coral and sand under a relentless sun. From the deck of a landing craft, Seabees watch the jagged coastline approach. Japanese pillboxes crown every ridge. Each concrete block seems immovable, each slit in the wall's a mouth ready to spit death. The first wave hits the beach at dawn. Marines charge forward under a storm of bullets, their advance slowed by tangled barbed wire and coral obstacles. Behind them, Seabees operate armored bulldozers, their engines growling like beasts. Each push of a blade crushes sandbags, timber barricades, and fragments of concrete. A pillbox that would have stopped an infantry assault is reduced to rubble in minutes. Explosives are placed with precision. TNT charges collapse entrances just as Marines take cover, timing destruction to minimize casualties. At Eniwetok, the Seabees' dual role becomes starkly clear. They are builders constructing supply paths and airstrips. They are combatants clearing deadly fortifications. Lieutenant Commander Jim Mahoney coordinates a team of bulldozer operators while under intermittent artillery fire. He shouts orders through the deafening roar of engines, simultaneously calculating which pillbox to tackle next and ensuring his men remain shielded from sniper fire. In these moments, engineering decisions become matters of life and death. On nearby Roina Moor, similar scenes unfold. Seabees work alongside Marines to construct landing zones on beaches riddled with craters. Japanese snipers target the bulldozer crews specifically, but armor plating and coordinated covering fire allow the machines to keep moving. Every cleared path is a lifeline. Every demolished bunker is a step closer to victory. Engineers are no longer behind the front lines. They are the front line. The stakes escalate on Polilliu, September 1944. The Japanese have fortified the island with concrete pillboxes, connected by tunnels and trenches. Marines struggle to advance through the killing fields of sand and coral, while Seabees move with relentless purpose. Bulldozers are fitted with improvised armor and sometimes machine guns. Explosives are deployed in synchronized bursts, collapsing tunnels and pillboxes that had withstood aerial bombardment. Each destruction requires careful calculation. Misjudged, it could kill a Marine or trigger a collapse on the bulldozer itself. Seabees operate with both precision and improvisation. When a bulldozer becomes stuck in coral rubble, men lift logs and create makeshift rollers. When a pillbox is too heavily reinforced, they place explosives in strategic weak points, often lying flat beneath gunfire to set charges. The rhythm is constant. Push clear, explode, advance. There is no pause. Each man knows that speed and ingenuity are the difference between survival and annihilation. At Iwo Jima, February 19th, 1945, the turning point becomes almost cinematic in its intensity. The volcanic black sand slows Marines and equipment alike. Japanese pillboxes, camouflaged in ash and reinforced concrete, dominate the landscape. Seabees advance alongside bulldozers, carving paths through mines and barricades. Engineers remove obstacles that would otherwise have delayed entire battalions, creating lanes for tanks and artillery. Explosions send clouds of black dust into the sky, revealing the skeletons of bunkers that had seemed indestructible. The intensity of the moment is punctuated by human courage. Operators like Seabee Chief Harold W. Smith work hours without rest, sweat and blood mixing with ash and sand. Marines rely on every inch cleared. Each collapsed pillbox is both a tactical victory and a psychological blow to the defenders. Japanese troops, trapped in tunnels or emerging from bunkers, find themselves confronted not only by rifles, but by armored machines and explosives wielded with surgical precision. At these battles, the Seabees' combination of construction skill, technological adaptation, and combat courage crystallizes. Roads, airstrips, and cleared landing zones are no longer mere infrastructure. They're instruments of survival and offensive power. The line between builder and fighter dissolves completely. Each operation is a testament to human ingenuity under fire and the ability to adapt tools of creation into tools of destruction. The cumulative effect is decisive. Islands that could have cost months to secure fall in weeks. Japanese defensive networks crumble not just from bombs or bullets, but from the relentless, calculated advance of bulldozers, explosives, and men willing to fight as builders. The turning point is clear. In the Pacific, the ability to construct under fire equals the ability to survive and dominate. And yet, this is only the first part of the story. The battles that follow will push the Seabees to the edge of endurance. testing not only skill and courage, but the limits of human ingenuity under relentless fire. The next section will detail the most harrowing confrontations, where survival and victory hinged entirely on the builders' capacity to fight as soldiers. April 1st, 1945. Okinawa, the last major stepping stone toward Japan, rises from the sea, scarred by volcanic ridges and coral cliffs. The island is a fortress. Every hill, every ridge, every narrow valley has been prepared by Japanese engineers to stop the advancing Allies. The Seabees arrive alongside Marines, aware that this operation will test everything they have learned in the Pacific. From the moment the landing craft hits the beaches, chaos erupts. Mortar rounds explode in clouds of sand. Machine gun fire rakes the shore. Coral obstacles, sharpened stakes, and mines slow the infantry. Behind the lines, Seabees roar into action. Bulldozers armored with steel plates plow through defensive obstacles. Explosives are placed with precision, collapsing pillboxes that had withstood naval bombardments. Every cleared path is a lifeline. Every demolished bunker a tactical breakthrough. Innovation becomes survival. In one sector, a bulldozer becomes trapped in coral rubble under enemy fire. Without hesitation, Seabees roll logs beneath the treads, transforming makeshift materials into a lifting mechanism. In another instance, a pillbox reinforced with steel beams is too resilient for standard charges. Engineers rig timed explosives to compromise structural weak points, lying flat beneath gunfire to trigger detonation at the exact moment Marines take cover. The combination of ingenuity and courage becomes almost surgical, each action calculated to minimize casualties while maximizing impact. Meanwhile, Japanese defenders adapt as well. Snipers target construction crews. Tunnels allow rapid repositioning of forces, and hidden artillery strikes aim to crush the advancing equipment. Yet, the Seabees' coordination with infantry, artillery, and naval gunfire nullifies much of this advantage. Engineers no longer simply build. They dictate the pace and direction of battle. Roads, cleared fields, and temporary bridges allow tanks, trucks, and supplies to reach frontline troops faster than the enemy can respond. Iwo Jima offers an even more intense example. Black volcanic ash slows every advance. Bunkers are hidden in lava tubes and reinforced with steel and concrete. Marines struggle, pinned by concentrated fire. The Seabees push forward with bulldozers fitted with armor plating, ramming through coral walls, smashing barricades, and clearing obstacles. Explosives are used in tight synchronization. One miscalculation could bury a machine or kill a nearby Marine. Yet the Seabees execute with precision born from months of experience. Each collapsed pillbox shifts the battle incrementally, opening avenues for infantry and artillery to move with deadly efficiency. The human cost is staggering. Seabees work hours without rest, sweat and blood mixing with ash and sand. They endure mortar fire, sniper attacks, and the psychological weight of their dual role. Builders tasked with destruction. Yet their perseverance turns chaos into opportunity. Bulldozers become moving shields, explosives clear paths, and constructed roads carry vital supplies to the front lines. The engineer's work becomes inseparable from combat strategy. At the culmination of Okinawa and Iwo Jima, The impact of the Seabees is undeniable. Entire Japanese defensive networks collapse, not solely from bullets and bombs, but from the relentless advance of armored machinery, explosives, and men who had been trained to build but now fight as warriors. Every airstrip, road, and bridge built under fire becomes a decisive factor in the momentum of the Pacific Campaign. These climactic moments illustrate a profound truth. In the Pacific, survival, mobility, and combat effectiveness were inseparable from engineering skill. The Seabees' ability to construct while under fire and to turn tools of creation into instruments of destruction shaped the outcomes of these pivotal battles. It was a war where every blade of a bulldozer and every placement of TNT could determine life or death for hundreds of men. The turning point is clear. The Seabees were no longer auxiliary support. They were central to victory. Their blend of ingenuity, courage, and tactical execution not only demolished enemy fortifications, but redefined how warfare could integrate engineering, logistics, and combat. These victories, however, came at a high cost. Men were wounded, machinery destroyed, and every island left scars that would take decades to heal. By mid-1945, the scope of the Seabees' contributions was undeniable. Islands once deemed impregnable now bore airstrips, roads, and supply depots forged under fire. Okinawa, Iwo Jima, Saipan, and Peleliu were no longer isolated bastions. They had been transformed into operational hubs capable of sustaining the next wave of the Pacific Campaign. Each bulldozed path, each collapsed pillbox had shifted the strategic balance in favor of the Allies. The human toll, however, was staggering. Across these campaigns, hundreds of Seabees were killed or wounded, often in close proximity to Japanese fortifications they were tasked to neutralize. On Iwo Jima alone, construction units sustained dozens of casualties while clearing bunkers and opening lanes for infantry and artillery. Yet their presence saved far more lives than it cost. Marines advancing behind bulldozers and newly constructed roads suffered fewer losses than they would have without the Seabees' intervention. Casualty reports reflect this paradox. While Seabees were officially non-combatants in training, in practice their survival often depended on immediate engagement with the enemy. Navy records show that battalions operating under heavy fire were responsible for clearing fortifications that, left unchallenged, would have caused far greater Allied losses. The Seabees' unique ability to combine construction skill with combat readiness directly influenced the operational tempo of the Pacific War, allowing the U.S. to maintain the momentum necessary for the final push toward Japan. Strategically, the impact was profound. Islands transformed by Seabee efforts became staging grounds for air operations, troop movements, and logistics. Okinawa's airfields allowed fighter squadrons to provide crucial cover for subsequent naval operations, while supply routes enabled sustained artillery and infantry campaigns. Without the rapid construction and clearing efforts of the Seabees, many of these operations would have been delayed or rendered impossible under Japanese defensive pressure. Recognition followed in various forms. Seabee units received commendations from Navy commanders, and individual acts of bravery were noted in dispatches. Lieutenant Colonel William Bill Doane, overseeing operations on Saipan, reported in a field memo that the ability of bulldozer crews to operate under fire saved entire companies from becoming pinned in deadly kill zones. Such acknowledgments were rare in the Pacific, where the spotlight often favored frontline infantry. Yet within military circles, the Seabees' reputation grew as both builders and warriors. Beyond individual acts, the organizational effectiveness of the Seabees became a model for integrating engineering into combat operations. Coordination between Seabee battalions, Marines, and Navy units demonstrated that construction could be a force multiplier, directly shaping outcomes rather than merely supporting them. This integration would influence post-war military engineering doctrine, highlighting the importance of adaptability, innovation, and cross-disciplinary coordination in modern warfare. At the same time, the aftermath revealed the limitations and human costs of such dual roles. Equipment was frequently destroyed, bulldozers immobilized by rubble or enemy fire, and the relentless pace of construction and combat exhausted even the most seasoned crews. Letters and memoirs from returning Seabees speak to the psychological strain of operating in this environment. The stress of witnessing destruction while performing the very acts that ensured survival left lasting impressions on many veterans. The immediate post-battle period also involved extensive repair and reinforcement. Seabees worked to rebuild infrastructure damage during combat, not only to sustain ongoing operations, but to prepare for eventual occupation duties. Roads, docks, and airfields required constant maintenance under harsh conditions, further emphasizing that the Seabees' work was never purely ceremonial or temporary. Their construction under fire was the backbone of operational success. The combination of tactical innovation, technological adaptation, and human resilience ensured that the Seabees' efforts had consequences far beyond the individual battles. Their presence accelerated Allied advances, reduced overall casualties among infantry units, and established a blueprint for integrating construction, logistics, and combat into a cohesive operational strategy. From this immediate aftermath, the full scope of their contribution becomes clear. The Pacific Campaign was not won by infantry alone. It was won by men who could build while under fire, who could flatten enemy fortifications with bulldozers and explosives, and who transformed islands into operational strongpoints that enabled decisive victory. Beyond immediate battlefield results, the Seabees' work had enduring consequences that shaped the Pacific Campaign and left a lasting imprint on military engineering. Their ability to construct vital infrastructure under fire meant that American forces could maintain operational momentum across vast distances, a critical factor in the success of the island-hopping strategy. Airstrips, roads, and supply depots established by Seabee battalions became lifelines, enabling rapid troop movements, resupply, and medical evacuation, often in areas previously considered inaccessible or too dangerous to hold. The psychological impact on both sides was profound. For American troops, the presence of Seabees instilled confidence. Infantry units could advance knowing that behind them, bulldozers were clearing paths, explosives were dismantling obstacles, and engineers could repair equipment under fire. Commanders noted that Seabee operations often reduced hesitation on the battlefield. Marines and Army units trusted that logistical and engineering support would arrive exactly when needed. In effect, the Seabees became both shield and spear, protecting lives while enabling offensive action. For Japanese defenders, the Seabees were a constant source of frustration and demoralization. Fortifications that were carefully designed to repel infantry or even withstand naval bombardment were rendered vulnerable to the relentless ingenuity of engineers under fire. Reports captured by the Japanese High Command acknowledged the Seabees' effectiveness. noting their mechanical beasts that could flatten pillboxes and clear obstacles with terrifying efficiency. The combination of American infantry and Seabee operations forced defenders into increasingly desperate and psychologically taxing situations, eroding morale long before final assaults concluded. Strategically, the lessons of the Seabees influenced future military doctrine. Their integration into frontline operations demonstrated the value of cross-disciplinary units capable of both combat and engineering tasks. Post-war planning in the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps codified the principle that rapid construction and logistics must be inseparable from operational planning, particularly in expeditionary warfare. Islands captured and developed by Seabees became models for amphibious assault logistics, providing templates for airfield construction, road networks, and defensive fortification clearance that informed later Cold War deployments. Culturally, the Seabees left an enduring legacy within both the Navy and American society. They were celebrated not merely as support troops, but as combatants whose ingenuity, courage, and resilience shaped victory. Memorials, written accounts, and veteran organizations preserve their stories, emphasizing the paradox of men trained to build, yet forced to fight. Memoirs recounting these campaigns highlight the pride of Seabees in their dual role, balancing their destructive tasks with a commitment to creation, rebuilding as quickly as they destroyed, often in the same day. The human dimension cannot be overstated. Many Seabees returned home bearing scars, both physical and psychological, from years of construction under constant threat. Yet they carried skills, discipline, and problem-solving abilities forged in combat. Their experience demonstrated that adaptability, technical expertise, and courage could coexist in the most extreme circumstances. For the Japanese, the psychological legacy lingered as well. Islands previously considered impregnable had fallen, and the effectiveness of American engineering under fire became a symbol of the overwhelming material and tactical advantage the Allies could wield. Ultimately, the aftermath of the Seabees operations illustrates a central truth of modern warfare. Logistics, engineering, and combat are inseparable. Victory in the Pacific was not simply a matter of infantry strength or naval firepower. It was a function of innovation, adaptability, and the ability to turn construction into a weapon. The islands themselves bear witness to this legacy, transformed by bulldozers, explosives, and the men who wielded them under fire. As the dust settled across the Pacific, the Seabees' achievements set the stage for reflection. Their story compels us to consider not only what they built or destroyed, but why their dual role mattered. How the interplay of engineering, courage, and combat reshaped both the islands of the Pacific and the very nature of military operations. The Seabees' story is a testament to the paradox of war. Men who build become men who fight, and in doing so, reshape both the battlefield and history itself. They transformed islands into operational strongholds, yet every airstrip, road, and cleared path bore the marks of destruction and danger. Their hands, skilled in construction, were forced to wield explosives. Their minds, trained in engineering, were compelled to calculate survival under fire. In this duality lies their enduring legacy. Beyond the tactical victories, the Seabees embody human adaptability. Ordinary tradesmen confronted extraordinary circumstances and rose to meet them. Under scorching suns, through coral and ash, amid the roar of artillery and machine guns, they persisted. Every collapsed pillbox and every cleared obstacle tells a story not only of ingenuity, but of courage and resolve. The islands they rebuilt stand as monuments to the delicate balance between creation and destruction, labor and survival. Their work reshaped military doctrine. The integration of engineering and combat in the Pacific Campaign proved that victory often depends on the ability to adapt tools of construction into tools of war. The lessons of coordination, innovation, and rapid problem-solving continue to inform military operations today, underscoring a simple truth. Logistics, engineering, and combat are inseparable in modern warfare. Yet perhaps the most enduring impact is human. The Seabees remind us that in the crucible of war, ordinary people can perform extraordinary feats. They teach that resilience, skill, and ingenuity can overcome obstacles, whether concrete fortifications or the chaos of battle. And while the islands bear scars of conflict, they also bear the evidence of perseverance and ingenuity, a quiet but lasting tribute to the men who were, in equal measure, builders and warriors. In the end, the Seabees were never just builders. They were a force forged in sand, sweat, and fire. They bulldozed Japanese pillboxes into dust, yes, but they also built the pathways to victory, ensuring that every advance, every supply line, and every triumph rested on human courage, ingenuity, and unyielding determination. Their legacy endures, a lesson in adaptability, resilience, and the profound impact of those who can create and destroy in equal measure.